This video will help determine the absolute best management strategy for your short-term rental to both maximize income without creating a second job for yourself. I've coached hundreds of people through the process of finding, buying, and setting up really high-performing short-term rentals. And the question comes up all the time, should I hire a short-term rental property manager? And if not, how do I, quote, self-manage in a way that it doesn't become this huge undertaking? And I'm a huge believer that the way you manage one property is very different from the way you manage 5 or 10 or 20 properties. My wife and I personally own 39 short-term rental listings, and we spend maybe a few hours a week working on our properties in our short-term rental business, yet we technically self-manage and would never pay this crazy fee that property managers charge because it's just not necessary. So bottom line up front, in this video, I'm going to share with you a strategy for utilizing virtual team members, or VAs as a lot of people call them, to handle all the day-to-day in your business for a tiny fraction of what a property manager would cost and ensure that the quality stays super high at the same time. So we're going to talk about when to hire your first virtual team member, how to pick the perfect candidate for the role, how much to pay them, how to onboard them for success, and then how to work with them going forward so that it's minimal lift on your part, but yet they still do an excellent job. And if you want to work with us personally through the process of finding, buying, and setting up a really high cash flowing short-term rental, I have a program. It's a step-by-step program that I walk you through, and I personally work with you at the same time to help you find the absolute best performing short-term rental in the fastest time possible. So if you're interested in that, you can set up a call with me at the link in the description below. Just go to the link, fill out a few questions, and you get access directly to my calendar to book a time that we can talk through your goals, and I can share the details of the program and see if it's a good fit for you. So first, I think it's really important to understand what a short-term rental property manager actually does. So if I can share my screen here, these are the main responsibilities of a short-term rental property manager. So typically they're hiring the cleaners, they're hiring the handyman that does all the handyman work in between guests, they're managing the guest bookings and communicating with your guests while they're there, they're setting the pricing, they're scheduling the cleaners, they're doing the guest reviews when your guest checks out, and then hopefully they're optimizing your listing. And so for all of these tasks, you typically are paying somewhere between 20 to 30%. That's the average cost of a professional short-term rental property manager. Now, some places it's 15%, but typically they're only doing a few of these things. It's not the full gamut. And in some areas, it's 30%. Like there's no property managers that are less than that. But we'll just say an average of 25%. So now if we look at the difference in true cost of what it's costing you to bring on a professional property manager to manage your short-term rentals, it's actually 25% of your gross revenue, but it's actually 5 times your net cash flow. So net cash flow is really all I think about when I think about investing in properties, because that's the freedom number, right? That's the profit that's left over at the end of the day. So if we look at and compare the exact same property with a property manager and then without a property manager, you can see how this all the numbers work out. So this is a small multi-unit property that's bringing in about $8,000 a month. So a property manager is going to take $2,000 right off the top, right? That's 25%. And then you still have all your other expenses like your PITI, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, your cleaning cost, your lawn and snow removal, your utilities, all those other things. So you're left with about $500 a month. This is a really good deal. Like this is, bringing in $8,000 a month and still having some cash flow left over after a property manager eats away at 25% is considered a good deal today, believe it or not. But if you look at that compared to self-managing, so the same $8,000 is coming in, but yet you're keeping that $2,000 because instead of having that layer of management in place, you're going to do a few things yourself, or you're going to have someone do these on your behalf much cheaper. We'll talk about that in a second. You're still going to have the exact same other expenses. And that's what a lot of people don't think of or don't consider or think that that's going to change somehow. Like all of a sudden your cleaning fee is going to be lower, or your utilities might be lower, consumables. All those costs are still there. Even with a property manager, it doesn't change any of the other costs. But now you're left with $2,500 a month of net cash flow. So literally 5 times the net cash flow is coming in when you're not using a property manager in this case. And so if it's just one property, sometimes you can justify that. You can say, okay, well, it's just 500 compared to 2,500. That's, a big spread, but it's, $2,000. Well, if you want to grow a portfolio and actually get to financial freedom, look at the difference and the impact on financial freedom when you grow to 10 properties with a property manager or without. With a property manager, if you're only making $500 a month, that's $5,000 a month or $60,000 a year of net cash flow or profit. But if you don't have a property manager in place, now you're talking $25,000 a month of net cash flow coming in, or $300,000 a year. It's a massive difference in the way you live your life and your lifestyle based on the fact of having either a property manager or not in place. The other thing to consider too is if you use a property manager, you now don't qualify for the short-term rental tax loophole, because the rule states that you have to do more hours or more work on your business than any one other person. And so if you hire a short-term rental property manager, you basically are exempt or not able to qualify for this massive tax benefit that a lot of people are getting into short-term rentals just because of that, on top of all the cash flow that's possible. So think about that before you hire a property manager, and we'll talk through a system, again, to where you still qualify for that, but yet it doesn't have to become this huge undertaking. So again, going back to all the tasks that a property manager is responsible for, if we look at all those, instead of paying 25 to 30% to a property manager, instead what we can do is bring on that virtual team member and pay them $8 an hour. So I talked about how I was going to share with you what I recommend paying. $8 an hour is a fantastic income for a virtual team member who's located in the Philippines. And the Philippines is a perfect place to hire somebody from because most Filipinos speak English. There's some super high level of talent in the Philippines. The Philippine culture is very customer relations centric. You know, they're very friendly people. And so it's a perfect place where it's affordable, but yet $8 an hour is double the average pay of the local pay. If you were to get a local job in the Philippines, $8 an hour, that would be $4 an hour. So $8 an hour is actually double the local pay. So if you're willing to pay $8 an hour, you can attract some super high level talent that speak perfect English, that have years of experience in property management before. That's exactly what we did. So I just want to share with you the difference between what it looks like to have a property manager versus having a virtual assistant. So a full-time virtual assistant, if you paid them $8 an hour and they worked 40 hours a week, which I don't recommend in the beginning. For one property, you just don't need a virtual team member. You can do all the remote stuff yourself. It looks like a long list, but it's very doable. It's maybe a few messages a day max that you're handling, and it's very low lift. Once we got to 4 or 5 properties, that was the tipping point for us, and that's where I see it for a lot of people I work with, where it makes sense to bring on your first virtual team member at like 4 or 5 properties, right? Because now you have a significant amount of cash flow coming in. If you're buying the types of properties that we recommend that bring in several $1,000s a month of net cash flow, now you have 4 or 5 of those. So you multiply several $1,000s a month times 4 or 5. And if you bring on one part-time VA at that point, they can handle everything on a day-to-day basis. So let's just look at one full-time virtual assistant at $8 an hour. That's $16,662 a year. So now we have, like I mentioned, 39 short-term rental listings. So over the years, we've added more virtual team members, right? So we have 4 full-time virtual team members. So let me just show you how this works out for us. So with 4 full-time virtual team members, they work in shifts and they handle literally every single thing on the list that I shared with you. So all the main responsibilities of a short-term rental property manager, all of these things, these 4 virtual team members do for our 39 listings. So this year we'll bring in $1.2 million of total revenue across all these listings. And so a property manager would have cost us $300,000 to manage these properties because that's 25% of our income. Instead, we have 4 full-time VAs that cost us $66,650. So that's a $233,350 difference between just handing these off to a property manager and us technically self-managing, but having an internal team. And the amazing thing about this is that our properties, I would pit the quality of our properties, our ratings, the customer satisfaction of our properties against any property manager out there. We have super, super high quality because our 4 team members are just focused on our 39 listings as opposed to property managers. They work on volume. So their goal is to get 100 listings or 200 listings that they manage, right? And so at some point they're spread very thin and your listing becomes sort of a commodity. They're checking a box to make sure they're, maintaining adequate quality, but the quality typically drops off at some point once the volume picks up to a high enough level. But ours are just focused on our property, so our quality stays super high. So now the question comes up, okay, so that's great. All of the virtual components are covered, but don't I still have to go clean the property? And don't I have to do all the maintenance on the property? But if you think about it, a property manager actually doesn't do any of those things. Typically, a property manager is virtual. So we just cut out the property manager with our virtual team members, and then we hire a really great cleaner and a really great handyman. And so between these two individuals, and we call them a cleaner plus or a handyman plus or utility person, they can handle absolutely everything boots on the ground. And the key is to have a really good checklist for each of them of everything that can possibly come up. And it's defined and assigned to one of these two people so that there's never anything that slips through the cracks. So by having a clear checklist for each one and making sure that absolutely everything that is needed, boots on the ground, is on that checklist, you actually never have to visit the property personally. We have properties 30 minutes down the road that I haven't visited in over 2 years because we have such an amazing team of cleaners and several handymen that we have in redundancy now that we have 39 short-term rentals, and they do all this. So they clean between guests, they do the laundry, they track our inventory for us, they inspect for damages between guests. They leave personalized notes and gifts for our guests. The handyman, he's on call. So even if something comes up in the middle of the night, he's available and can go fix it. If there's any emergency issues, if there's landscaping that needs to be done, they'll do light landscaping, snow removal, regular walkthroughs. They'll replace furnishings as they get worn out or need to be replaced. So between these two individuals, everything boots on the ground can be taken care of, and then your virtual team can do everything else so that you're literally involved very, very little in your business, but yet you're self-managing and saving and creating much, much more cash flow. So then the next question comes up, how do I pick the perfect candidate for this role? Like, who are these people, right? So unfortunately, there's been really big companies that have hired virtual workers. They've got to caught on that this is a good strategy to maximize profits. And so they've hired a lot of virtual workers at the lowest dollar that they can possibly pay, who are really kind of unqualified for the role. And as a result, all of us have had the experience of speaking to, the Verizon or the Comcast customer rep who can barely understand English, and they're reading from a script and they're just really not very helpful, right? And it's very frustrating, understandably. And so as a result, this creates the impression for a lot of people that this is what virtual assistants are, or this is what it means to have a virtual offshore team. And so a lot of people are reluctant to hire these virtual workers. Meanwhile, there's incredibly talented virtual workers who think through the lens of ownership and decision-making, not just button pushing or reading a script, which is a totally different experience. And the spectrum of talent in the virtual workforce is absolutely huge. I hired my team with the understanding up front that we will not be able to be involved in the decision-making on a regular basis. And I don't want to make it sound like it's 100% set it and forget it type of thing, but I needed someone who is going to have a high level of logic and emotional intelligence that can make decisions on a regular basis. Because anyone who owns a short-term rental business knows that there's no two situations that are exactly the same. So you can have guidelines that your team members can follow, but they need to be able to make decisions and act as if they're owners, because they actually kind of are, because our incentive is structured that way, which I'll get to in a minute. So as a result of doing this, will there be mistakes? Yes. From time to time, there will be mistakes, or there'll be some decisions that are different than the way you would have made them, right? But freeing up hours and hours of your time to have an occasional mistake here and there is so worth it. And sometimes actually the decisions that our team members make are actually better than the one I would have made myself. So some people are so tightly clung to making every decision in their business that they can't see the forest through the trees. And they're not willing to take this massive leap forward if it requires them to take one tiny step back by giving up a little bit of control and recognizing that others can actually do it as well or better than they can. And I know this because I was in that exact same situation. Now, I love my virtual team members. They are amazing, talented human beings with great families, and they're way better at their job in a lot of cases than I would be. To hire our team, I worked with a friend of mine who has an agency that helps you find really high-level talent for these types of roles. So if you want his contact information, just comment virtual team in the comments below and I'll shoot that over to you. And that brings me to the final two topics that I want to cover, and that is, how much should I pay my virtual team members? And then how do I set them up for the absolute best success going forward? And I kind of already half mentioned how much to pay them. So I would recommend starting with around $8 an hour. That will, in the Philippines, attract really high-level talent, people who can speak perfect English, they can communicate with your guests, they have years of experience as short-term rental property managers. These are the type of individuals that you want to work with. So I start with $8 an hour, but then I am a huge fan of every person that I work with having some sort of incentive-based pay as well, because anyone who manages a P&L and they've run a business knows that it's not just about, pushing a button and getting a paycheck, right? Your decision making has to be through the lens of the outcomes. And, because of the decisions I make today, my family might get to eat, a month from now or a year from now, right? And so I like to have that sort of setup with my team members as well, so that they can feel that, and their decision making is very different as a result. And so the two different ways that I think are very logical to set this up are, number one, when you have short-term rentals, you're rated by your guests in several different categories. And one of them is communication. And so since your team members are going to be doing all the communication, it's very logical to set up a bonus structure around the communication. So if you get all 5 stars in communication over a certain period, whether it's a week or a month, then there could be a bonus for the team. And so they're going to be very incentivized to make sure that the communication stays very strong with your guests. The other way is the overall revenue, because if I do better, I want my team members to feel that. And they can't control everything about the revenue, but they have a huge influence on that. So what we do is we take the properties that we owned this quarter last year, so the same time frame a year ago, and we compare the overall revenue, the income, to today. And so if we can increase that revenue above and beyond what it was same period last year, then I want the team to feel that. And I'm going to give them a percentage of that increased revenue, right? Because it helps me, it helps the business, it helps them as well. I want it to help them as well. And so they're very incentivized to do everything possible to increase the revenue, which again, helps everybody. So that's how to compensate your team members and then to set them up for the best success going forward. When I hired my first virtual assistant, I was kind of screwed up. Like, I didn't have all the systems in place. And a lot of people wait or think they need to wait until all the systems are in place. But there was 2 documents that really helped us as we brought in more virtual assistants. And those 2 documents are the Dune Dwellings Daily Operational Procedures document. And this document has different sections, and it's a working document. So it's a Google document that we can consistently update. And we've got sections like guest services. So we talk through how we do guest services, the different platforms. We are on Airbnb, we're on Vrbo. We also use Turno. We also use OwnerRez. We use PriceLab. So we talk through how we use all these different platforms. We talk through basic troubleshooting. So all the different things that come up regularly and how to troubleshoot those, and then frequently asked questions. And so this can grow and evolve over time. And then in addition to that, we hand them the Dune Dwellings property master file. So every property that we have, all the specifics about that property, from things like the door codes and the Wi-Fi code and the furnace filter size to any unique features about that property, things we want to let the guest know, so that the virtual team members know those properties inside and out, sometimes better than I do, and they're halfway around the world. So these 2 documents are really essential, and they're really helpful for new team members. And guess who created these documents? It was my first virtual team member. So I brought them in with the understanding that as we grow, we're going to grow together. We're a team here. And eventually you're going to be in charge. You're going to be the manager of other virtual team members. And so they were very incentivized in the beginning to create systems that will help other team members. And they've consistently updated those team members. So that first virtual team member that I brought in, now she's the manager, and she manages the schedule for the others. She oversees their work. She makes sure that the quality stays super high. She improves the system. And so it's grown, the team has grown, and it's allowed me to step back because she's taken ownership, and others have kind of stepped up as they've grown in their positions as well. So this is the secret to absolutely maximizing cash flow. And if you're buying the right properties, that should be several $1,000s a month per property. And I've done lots of other videos on the types of properties we buy, which are a little bit different than a lot of the short-term rental gurus out there are teaching. But you should buy really high cash flowing properties and then not have it all eaten up by a property manager. So if you follow this strategy, it doesn't become a full-time job for you to manage these properties, because you want freedom. You want both financial freedom and you want time freedom. And that's absolutely possible with this strategy. So as I mentioned, if you'd like to work with us through the process of finding, buying, in setting up really high cash flowing short-term rentals, which what I just went over is just one tiny component of that, you can set up a call with me and see if the Blueprint program is a good fit for you, right? So you can go to the description below. There's a link, just fill it out, and it'll take you right to my calendar, and you can set up a call to see if this makes sense for you. We can just talk through your goals and the specifics of the program. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, know that that means a lot to me, and I hope you got a ton of value from this. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.